Wasabi guys, Void here coming back at you all with yet another one of my deck techs for my patron, Rhino. If you don't already know what I do for my patrons, there's a specific reward tier that I offer where you get to request once a month either a top 10 video or a deck tech of your preference, and then sometime during that month I follow through and I make that video. For this video, for my patron Rhino, I am going to do a Sydri Galvanic Genius Commander deck tech. He wasn't exactly sure what direction to go with Sydri, so decided, you know what, we're just going to go with life gain artifacts, because honestly, that's probably the best way to work with her. It's kind of boring if you just want to go with the typical Esper artifacts. It's going to be the rest of the deck, but we primarily want to focus on life gain and taking advantage of creatures that deal with life loss as well. And there are some pretty decent artifacts that are capable of doing that. So if you're unfamiliar with Sydri, she is 3 mana in Esper color. She's not an artifact, but she does interact with other artifacts. She's a 2/2 human artificer. She has 2 pretty cool activated abilities, and by the way, her artwork is just beautiful by Therese Nielsen. The first activated ability is 1 blue to turn target non-creature artifact into an artifact creature, and its power and toughness becomes equal to the CMC of that non-creature artifact. So if it's a 7/7 non-creature artifact, it becomes a 7/7 until end of turn. And her second ability is 2 mana, 1 white, 1 black, to have target artifact creature gain death touch and lifelink until end of turn, which is pretty cool. It's a definite way to gain a ton of life. There are some pretty powerful artifact creatures in the game. Giving them not just death touch, but most importantly lifelink is what's going to help us synergize with life gain type cards. There's not a whole bunch of them in the deck, guys, but it is going to be somewhat of a theme that you'll notice. So before we actually get into the meat of the list, let's go over some lands that are noteworthy. We're not going to go over every single mana fixing land, but the most important ones I would say would be Academy Ruins, Buried Ruins. Both are going to help get you your artifacts back from your graveyard. Very good in a deck where certain combo pieces are important. And Inventor's Fair is just fantastic. It's one of the best lands they've printed in the last year or so, capable of getting you whatever artifact you want from your deck to your hand. Basically a tutor. You just need to have the Metalcraft trigger basically, and you're capable of sacrificing it. And of course, we are playing Esper artifacts, so having the different Mirrodin lands that are also considered artifacts is pretty cool, because there are certain cards that allow you to sacrifice artifacts, and sometimes you don't always need this excess of mana, and it's never really a bad thing if you just throw these away. Pretty decent artifact lands. And now we go on to more of the utility-based artifacts, the mana ramp and etc. We have Soul Ring, pretty basic. Sensei's Divining Top, also pretty simple. We want to get some good stuff on top of our deck. Skull Clamp is also pretty good. We do have a lot of Thopters, a lot of 1/1 tokens in here, so it's good to take advantage of that to get some card draw. And we of course play the 3 different signets you can play in these colors, because not just mana ramp but mana fixing is also important. We also play Lightning Greaves because sometimes Sydri is very important, and we also have some other creatures that combo as well, so we want to keep those creatures safe. Never really a bad thing. Time Sieve, one of the awesome combo cards that we have in here, combos with Thopter Assembly, which we're going to get to later on in this video. It's basically going to give us infinite turns. And then we play Caltrops. This is another good combo card with Sydri, because all we have to do is whenever our opponents try to attack us with any of their creatures, we just pay the second activated ability, the 2 mana there, give it death touch and lifelink until end of turn. So whenever they attack, then all those creatures are going to die unless they're indestructible, and you're also going to gain a little bit of life there too. We also play Chromatic Lantern, Darksteel Ingot for some more mana fixing. These are really good. Darksteel Ingot is also awesome because it's indestructible, and you could swing in there for a 3/3, gain a little bit of life, death touch as well. Sculpting Steel is fantastic in artifact decks. Getting a copy of any artifact is usually pretty good. We also play Mirage Mirror, a pretty new card for the deck. Being able to pay the activated ability and have it become a copy of anything. It doesn't actually remain an artifact, so it can dodge removal, which is also pretty nice. Aether Flux Reservoir, one of the big cards, one of the more iconic cards in the entire deck, I would say. When it comes to winning games, it's also pretty easy. Turning your stuff into lifelinkers, gaining a ton of life, being able to knock out players in the game shouldn't be too hard when our commander is specifically designed to help us get ahead in that aspect. Also, just fantastic if you're able to just play spell after spell after spell and gain a ton of life that way. Very good. Thran Dynamo, 4 mana for 3 mana. Pretty good value. And then we have Unwinding Clock. We do have some good artifacts that tap for mana, but we also have some other good artifacts that tap for other reasons. Very solid card. Belongs in just about every single artifact deck. Blank Moth Urn, can get out of hand pretty quickly if you have some token artifacts as well. It's going to give you the most colorless mana. Hopefully your opponents aren't also playing artifacts, or at least to the degree that you are. So it's a pretty good advantage card. It's also 5 CMC non-creature artifacts, so if you want to take advantage of that with Sydri, that's never a bad thing. We have Gilded Lotus, 5 mana for a 3 colored mana artifact that's going to give you whatever color you really need and 3 of that, so pretty solid. Mirror Work's going to give you a copy of an artifact that's entering the battlefield. You pay that extra mana. Pretty cool getting copies, never a bad thing. Scour Glass is our bit of removal specifically for the deck. It's pretty cool. You can only use it on your upkeep, but chances are if you're not going to use it, it's never a bad thing to turn it into a creature and then swing with it with Sydri. But during your upkeep, having the option of destroying everything with the exception of artifacts and lands is pretty good. Unfortunately, Sydri bites the dust, but most of your stuff is going to be safe and protected. Staff of Nin gives us extra card draw, allows us to ping a creature or a player. It's also higher CMC, pretty good. Achroma's Memorial, just a ton of keywords, and just gonna make everything outrageous when it comes to combat. And it's just in addition to what you can get with Sydri, giving lifelink and death touch. That's a lot of life you can gain. That's a lot of advantage you can gain just through combat. Not a lot of artifact decks are well known for being combat oriented, but the fact that you can also turn this into a creature with Sydri is fantastic. Very cool combo there. Spine of Ishaz is another high costed non-creature artifact that you can turn into a creature, and if it were to die as a creature, that's pretty cool. It comes back to your hand, or even if it's just destroyed as an artifact, not a creature. That's pretty cool. Darksteel Forge, one of the best cards in just about every single artifact deck. Makes all your artifacts indestructible, and it's a high CMC, so turn into a creature. It's a 9/9, swing, give it death touch, lifelink. Pretty cool. Now we move on to our creatures. We have, I believe, just as many creatures as we do artifacts. We have Baleful Strix, pretty underrated. Enters the battlefield, draws us a card. Also has death touch, decent blocker. Ethereum Sculptor, cost reduction for our artifacts, pretty good. Shimmer Mirror, gonna allow us to flash into play our artifacts. Very underrated. I love flash, one of my favorite keywords. Treasure Mage, gonna get us our Darksteel Forge, Spine of Ishaz, Chroma's Memorial, whatever we need as long as it's CMC 6 or greater. Can't really go wrong, especially in this deck where CMC does matter. Then we have Arkham Daxon, sort of tinker on an activated ability there, where we can get to our combo pieces if we want our Time Sieve or our Thopter Assembly and we want to go for that combo. But just getting any good artifact from our deck and trading in something that's not so good, like maybe you're done with your Sensei's Divining Top and you want to get rid of it, really good. Master Transmuter, another way to take advantage of just terrible artifacts that are on the field, such as Ancient Den. If you don't really like one of those artifact lands, return it to your hand and then put something like a Blightsteel Colossus on the field in its place. Just absolutely disgusting. Padine, Consul of Innovation, gives our artifacts hexproof, and during our upkeep gives us some card draw because we're likely going to have the highest CMC artifact. Phyrexian Metamorph, good clone, love it, fantastic, also able to copy artifacts. Solemn Simulacrum, just good value all around, belongs in just about every single deck in the format, not just artifact decks. Gonna give you a land, also gonna draw you a card when it dies. Aethersworn Agitator doubles as removal for both enchantments and creatures, so having your removal on creatures is never really bad. I say this all the time, it's pretty good if your creatures are multi-purpose in that aspect. Kuldotha Forge Master, very similar to our other artifact tutors. If we're able to just sacrifice 3 irrelevant artifacts on our board, get one of our combo pieces and win that way, or even get an Aether Flux Reservoir and just try to win the game that way. Pretty good card. Sphinx Summoner is going to get us whatever artifact creature we want from our deck, so hopefully it's going to get us our Thopter Assembly, and then combo with Time Sieve, something like that. Duplicate, great creature removal on an ETB, also decent artifact. Noxious Gearhulk, fantastic, a way to gain some life too, and also removal. Very underrated card. I'm not seeing it in a lot of artifact builds for Commander, which it should definitely see some more play in. Sharuum the Hegemon, one of the staples in Commander when it comes to artifacts. If you're playing 4-color with Breya, or if you're just playing Esper artifacts, Sharuum the Hegemon should be in your deck. Get you back whatever good stuff from your graveyard that you need. Then we have Steel Hellkite, good removal if we're able to connect and pay that mana. Also good flying, able to deal some damage easier that way. Thopter Assembly, like I said before, good combo piece. During our upkeep, if we have no other Thopters, which usually we don't get a lot of Thopters, we get some, but not a lot. This is our primary way of getting them. During our upkeep, if we have no others, we return it to our hand, and then we get 5 of those tokens. So with Time Sieve, we have 5 tokens to sacrifice, and then we take an extra turn. Well, that extra turn we play Thopter Assembly. After we sacrifice the 5 tokens again, we just keep doing that over and over, and eventually we just play more lands, we get more mana, we play our other stuff, such as Aether, Flux, Reservoir, we gain a ton of life and then likely win the game. Worm Coil Engine, Death Touch, Lifelink. When it dies, you get 2 different tokens that have those keywords. Pretty good. Magister Sphinx, just a painful card to have to go up against, but it is very valuable, reducing an opponent's life total to 10. If you're able to get it back or copy it, then you can do it to multiple different players and spread the love around, make it easier to finish them off. Pretty deadly card. Mirror Battlesphere, fantastic, able to deal some more damage aside from just combat damage, but also with its ability to tap down your other mirrors and deal that much damage. Pretty good. Filigree Angel, normally wouldn't put this in an artifact deck, but for the fact that you're gaining life for each artifact you control, that is very relevant when you consider the interaction with Aether, Flux, Reservoir, and just the rest of your life gain synergies in general. Sphinx of the Steel Wind, just great keywords, just a great creature all around. Already has lifelink, but you can also give it Death Touch, so gonna put in a lot of work when it comes to combat. Metalwork Colossus, very underrated card, also doesn't see a lot of play, but also pretty good with Sydri if we can give it Death Touch and Lifelink just for that 2 mana. We have a 10/10 there that's pretty substantial when it comes to combat, and we're able to get that insane cost reduction. We do have a lot of non-creature artifacts that are going to make it pretty much cheap or for free to cast them. And then we have the way of bringing him back to our hand if we just sacrifice 2 artifacts. Pretty good card. Blightsteel Colossus is a staple in a lot of different artifact decks. Trample, Infect, pretty deadly. Going to knock players out of the game pretty easily. We only have 1 Planeswalker in the deck, and that is Tezzeret the Seeker. Honestly, I was struggling to find cuts for this deck. There was a lot of cards I was considering, and honestly, I just felt like going with 1, and it was honestly the best artifact Planeswalker that I can think of, and that is Tezzeret the Seeker. Gonna give you whatever artifact you need from your deck, as long as it's underneath or equal to his loyalty. This is gonna help us get our time sieve if we don't already have it. That's already pretty good. But even if it's just untapping artifacts with his plus, that's also fantastic. Usually don't really care too much about his ult, but if we're able to get there, I guess that's pretty decent. We do play 3 enchantments in an artifact deck. We play Mechanized Production. This is also a win con if we're able to get infinite turns. We can just play Mechanized Production, and if our opponents can't stop us from getting infinite turns or stop Mechanized Production, we're just going to win the game. Thopter Spy Network. This is also fantastic. Whenever we deal damage with 1 or more artifact creatures, we get to draw a card, and it's basically like a Bitter Blossom for Thopter tokens, so pretty fantastic that we get those tokens on the upkeep as well. And then we have Revel in Riches. This card is fantastic. I recommend it for so many different artifact decks now. Whenever our opponent's creature dies, we get a treasure artifact token, and during our upkeep, if we have 10 or more of them, we win the game, so it's yet another win con. But more importantly, we want it for that synergy of killing off our opponent's stuff and getting artifacts for it that also give us mana, so it's a lot of mana that you can get off a card like this. We do have a few sorceries. We have Demonic Tutor, Fabricate, just to get our combo pieces, our Thopter Assembly, Aether, Flux, Reservoir, Time Save, that stuff. And we have Merciless Eviction, because it's really one of the only board wipes we have in the deck that's capable of just exiling, dealing with something for good, and it's usually going to be able to deal with whatever we need it to. Open the Vaults is just going to help us out. It might help someone else out if they're playing a lot of artifacts or enchantments that are in the graveyard, but we want to bring back a lot of our artifacts that are in our graveyard, so a pretty decent trade-off. And we do have some instants as well. We have Enlightened Tutor to get whatever artifact, put it on the top of our deck so that we can then draw it. Yet another good tutor option. Swords to Plowshares, pretty basic removal. Cyclonic Rift, same thing, pretty much a staple in every blue deck. Anguished Unmaking, very good card, very good exiling removal of non-land permanents. And Thirst for Knowledge is going to give us some good card draw, and likely we have an artifact that we can discard so we don't have to discard 2 cards. At instant speed, that's pretty decent. Whir of Invention, kind of like Court of Calling for artifacts. Improvise is sort of the Convoke for artifacts. That's pretty cool. Gonna get us whatever artifact we need from our deck. And then we do have 1 counterspell in the deck, guys. It's Spell Swindle. Not really meant just for the counterspelling, but rather just to give us those artifacts that we can get. Sack those for more mana. I think it's pretty cool as sort of a ramp spell, as opposed to just viewing it as a counterspell. I think it's pretty cool to view it as a ramp spell. So anyway, guys, that was my Sydri Galvanic Genius deck tech for one of my patrons, Rhino. Again, the link will be in the description below for my Patreon if you're interested in doing something like this with me. As far as the deck goes, I absolutely love Sydri, not just for the artwork, like I said before, Therese Nielsen, fantastic artist. But the deck is very unique. It's not your typical artifact deck. It has a lot of elements that are very similar to Shroom the Hegemon, Brea even, but for the most part you focus on more of the smaller aspects of the game, such as combat. Damage with lifelink is pretty good. If you can gain a ton of life off of that, that's fantastic. And also focusing on things like CMC, something you don't normally do with Shroom the Hegemon and Brea. These are the more pure artifact-based decks. I kind of feel like Sydri has a little bit more wiggle room. You can include a lot more other things, and it still kind of works out. You can even include some control in here, make it a little bit more control-based, throw some more counter spells in here if you want to, and I think it works out pretty well. And also the link to the deck will be in the description box below as well. Let me know if you enjoy Sydri Galvanic Genius as a commander. I think she's awesome. But anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here, signing off.